Well, happy Monday, everybody. Once again, time for Ask Mike. Alyssa Orange alongside Mike Irwin. Another fresh batch of questions and answers to talk about.
That's a lot of them.
I'm excited. They better be good today. Were they good?
I hope they will be. The questions were good. I don't know
the
about
answers.
the answers.
That's the important part. All right, we're going to find out. Our first question comes from So Manila, who wants to know, is it me or is Eric Musselman on the verge of building a monster on the hill?
Yeah, I guess you could make that argument. Look, it's all based on the fact that he had a top 5 recruiting class. Now, last time I remember anything like that was Nolan Richardson's class when he brought in Corliss and Big Dog and Corey Beck and all those guys. That was definitely a top 5 class. But it starts with that. But then there's this idea that he's just totally come in and bought into the culture. He's all over the internet and the fans love it. He's just this funny guy that's always happy, and he's involved his whole family in it, and that's important. I think that helps in recruiting, and it helps with the relationship with the fans because they know he wants to be here. His whole family wants to be here. They bought into this. He's not just some guy coming through to try to, have a couple of good seasons and move on. So there's that, and then there's this whole business of the way he just never stops studying how to plan for a specific opponent. And he puts his players through classes almost. When they're getting ready to play a game, it's almost like, well, we got to go to class and learn all about this next opponent. He coaches basketball the way football coaches do it, and I think the fans are warming up to that idea. So when you combine all that stuff, it's really easy to say, yeah, he's creating a monster. I mean, come on, we need a little more time to see how that's going to work out. I mean, I think a lot of people are saying, well, if he did what he did with that limited roster last year, what's he going to do with all these guys? And, well, we're about to find out.
Do you think because of Musselman's background in the NBA and the way that they do things in the NBA and the new culture of college basketball where you're going to have guys transfer in and out and you're going to have one and dones, that Musselman is set up for success because of his NBA background?
Well, I do, and again, Moses Moody could end up being the first one and done at Arkansas. And I'm not a real fan of one and dones, but, I mean, it's hard to argue against getting a guy if he's that good. But then where he's also different is that he's really jumped in and took total advantage of the transfer portal. Because a big part of what they may do next year is some transfer guys, a couple that came in and sat out, and then one in particular that he's brought in from Indiana. So when you combine all that together, that's just why there's such a buzz about this guy right now.
Yeah. All right. Said 76, a fan favorite. We love you, Said. Do you think Barry Odom can bring back the toughness to our defense? I miss guys like Steve Atwater, Ken Hamlin, and Tony Bua, who left everything on the field. Past few years, the defense hasn't played with a lick of toughness or pride.
Okay, I'll disagree with that a little bit in that I don't think the toughness was the issue. I think it was the game plan. I think you had a defensive coordinator who was so worried about mistakes that he plain vanillaed the defense. He came in here, John Chavis came in here with a reputation of a guy that really went after opposing quarterbacks, and he didn't do it. He pretty much played it straight up. It looked like to me he was afraid to put his secondary on an island, because that's what you do sometimes when you do corner blitzes or whatever, then your other guys are back there kind of exposed if you don't get to the quarterback. And it almost looked like, to me, he was afraid to do a lot of that stuff, and so they just sat back and were reactive. They just reacted to what was happening, which made them passive, which you could sort of, I guess you could see that and say they're not tough. But I think it wasn't so much the players themselves, it was the scheme they were in. And I think that's one of the things that Barry Odom is changing right now. He's telling them, okay, nothing wrong with you guys as players. We're just going to put a different scheme out there, and you're going to look a lot better, and they like that. They're buying into it.
Yeah. Old Hog says, I've read that good baseball players who come back to college for their senior year lose leverage with pro teams when it comes to salary demands and often have to settle for less money than if they would have entered the draft after their junior year. Why is that?
That's a really interesting question. In baseball, there is this perception that once you get to your senior year, you're out of options. In other words, Major League Baseball, when they're negotiating with you, you pretty much got to accept what they want, because where else are you going to go? Yeah. It's either deal with them or your baseball career is over. So players generally will avoid that like the plague. They want to have another year just in case they can say, well, no, I don't like that, and then maybe the team will say, okay, we'll give you a little bit of a raise. So why doesn't that happen in football? The main reason is because of the differences in the two sports. Just like you have one and dones in basketball, and you have baseball players that regularly leave after 3 years. In football, the longer you're in a program, generally the better they look at you. A fifth-year senior, if he's got talent and has shown a lot of ability, would be very attractive to an NFL team because they want maturity. They also don't have a minor league system.
Yeah.
So where a baseball program could take a guy and say, we'll sign you for almost no money, and if you're any good, we'll stick you out here and let you go through our system, and then if you're good, you'll make your way up through there. Well, football doesn't mess with you for that long. First of all, they don't have that option. So their only option is to take you and say, okay, you're not really what we want right now, but we think you might have some talent, so we'll put you on the practice squad. But you're not going to be on that practice squad more than a year or two. So they don't mess with you as long as baseball would.
Yeah.
So
you're not a project to them.
That's right.
You either have it or you don't.
And so they would look at a guy who is a senior and say, do we want this guy? And if you do, then they'll pay you. And also, look, they're not paying the kind of money baseball is. I mean, basketball is the one that's gotten crazy, but baseball pays a lot more money than the NFL does. And they don't pay out these signing bonuses the way baseball generally does. So there's just a lot of reasons why it's different in baseball than it is in other sports.
Yep. They lose leverage. Oh, that's your answer. I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better at this.
That's for the people.
Yeah.
That's for the people
But this
who
is
don't
for the
want to
internet.
listen to me. They just want to read it. So we do it both ways.
Yeah. Wizard of Hog says, I listened to your comments last week, and when the current series agreement with A&M to play in Jerry World ends, a good solution replacement would be to rotate those games in Arlington with some teams that used to play like Tech, TCU, Baylor, and maybe throw in Oklahoma State as well. But please forget Texas. We want them, but they don't want or need us. So just put that pipe dream away, please.
Okay.
Is there a question in there?
No, there's not a question, but he is making a statement.
Yes.
And I would just say that it's not my pipe dream. I don't care. I threw that out because I firmly believe that when the A&M game goes away, they're going to continue to want to play there. It's good for recruiting to have a presence down there. And that's an attractive game, not only to Arkansas fans, especially those that live in the Dallas area, but also any opponent you would play. So if you, for instance, took a rotating thing with various Big 12 teams that are close to that area, and that would include Baylor, that would include TCU, and it would include Texas because it's not that far down to Austin. So those three teams in particular, I don't know so much about Texas Tech, but those three teams in particular I could see would be a rotator. And no, Texas is probably not interested in a permanent every year series with Arkansas, but once every 3 or 4 years to get to go into Jerry World, that is such a treat for fans and the players to go in and play in that environment that regardless of what they thought about you as an opponent, they would still want to play that game. So it's not a pipe dream, but it's also not my dream. It's just me speculating that Hunter Yurachek might do that.
I'm going to tell you, as a non-conference schedule, you look at Arkansas's non-conference schedule in the future, teams like Rice, they're not very sexy teams.
Right.
You get some Big 12 teams like TCU, Baylor, Texas, maybe Oklahoma State or something to rotate with you. I would take that in a heartbeat for sure. All right. Rob's 4516 says, I've been reading a lot of discussion on Hogville about Razorback culture, and that in order for a coach to be successful in Fayetteville, he needs to understand and buy into it. Do you feel that is correct? And if so, can you explain exactly what Razorback culture means to you and why it's different from other programs? As an aside, I was born and raised in Arkansas and graduated from the U of A, so I have my opinion, but I'd like to hear what yours is.
I don't consider it essential, but I do think it's important. Now, what does it mean? It means a lot of things, but basically it means that you as a coach understand the history of the program. You understand the fans. You understand what pushes their buttons, what makes them happy, what makes them mad. And I will tell you that in particular, when you come into this state, if you're not from Arkansas, if say you weren't, like Ken Hatfield was a Razorback, so he had an advantage. Houston Nutt was here briefly as a player, so you have an advantage if you come in like that. But if you come in from the outside,
like Brett Bielema or Chad Morris,
then this is what Dan Hampton talked about in the Zoom interview with me when he talked about carpetbaggers. So carpetbaggers would be a guy that does not buy into the culture. He comes in from the outside. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't make an effort to
Tries
find
to
out
sell
what's
you his stuff.
Yeah, and Bielema did that a lot. Remember, he was changing the way the offense was, and he was telling people, this is the way we're going to do it. He went down to Texas and started popping off to all those people. Well, that's an example of a guy that didn't buy in. He was bringing his own stuff in here, and he was going to change things. That does not generally work, but it occasionally does work. It worked for Petrino. He brought his own stuff in here, and I don't know if he knew what the culture was, but I don't think he cared about it.
Yeah.
And he was successful. But he got himself in, and he would have continued, if he had continued to win, he would have stayed here. So you don't have to have that. Now, you can't do stupid things like hire your mistress and ride around on a motorcycle with her and have a wreck.
I think everyone's learned that lesson via Petrino.
So you know, but all of that is beside the point. Here's the point. Sam Pittman grows up over in Oklahoma, not too far away from here, and he always wanted to be a Razorback, and he had his big chance when he came over here in high school and got to go to a Lou Holtz camp, and he got in the dorm with some guys and went off running around, and Lou Holtz caught him, and they kicked him out of the camp, and that was it. He never had a chance to come to Arkansas, and he said, I blew that. And he said, then I finally came back years later as an assistant coach, and I really, really liked it. It was a dream come true, but then there were some things about working with the head coach I didn't like, so I had to leave, and my wife was really mad at me. And I didn't think I was ever coming back, and then I got this opportunity. So here's the point. The very first day on the job, he gets up in front of all those people in the indoor and all those people watching on statewide TV, and what does he say? He said, there's no place in America, no school in America like the University of Arkansas. I will always remember that he said that right off the bat. I don't remember what Chad Morris said. I don't remember what Petrino said. I don't remember what all these other guys said when they got up. But I remember what he said. And in that one statement, what he was doing was separating himself from Chad Morris. People looked at that and went, we don't know a lot about this guy, but he's not Chad Morris. So they liked that. Now, he's still got to do a lot of things other than that. But here's something else that I will point out. Once Coach Broyles stepped down 3 years after I got here, and at the time, I remember thinking, well, I wonder who the next Coach Broyles is. And every coach that's been hired since then, and that's going on now 40 years, I've always asked myself, is this the guy? Is he the guy that's going to do what Coach Broyles did, which is come in from the outside, buy into the culture, get people behind him, and win, and not do anything stupid either, like get yourself involved in a controversy? And so all these guys have come along, and it didn't work. I mean, Jack Crow understood the culture really well, but he didn't win. And Houston Nutt won and understood the culture, but he got involved in some controversy, and so he left. And so there's all these things that's kind of prevented this from happening. So I don't think I ever thought Morris was going to be that guy, but I do think Pittman has a chance to be the next Frank Broyles, maybe. You know, that's what I'm looking at. And that would be really cool if right at the end of my career covering Arkansas, I could go back and get a guy that was a lot like Frank. Came in here, fans loved him, he loved it here, he's not going to leave, he's going to win. That would be terrific.
Yeah, that would be really,
That's
really
a long-winded answer about culture.
I love it. Archimedes asks, when the Razorback coaches take recruits on virtual tours, are they streaming them live while the coaches travel around campus, or are all the tours pre-recorded? Also, what are you using video formats such as what would you see on an HD camera, or are they able to take advantage of virtual reality equipment they purchased a few years ago? I don't know if using the VR format is even possible, but if it is, I bet that could be an amazing experience and blow recruits away.
Yeah, we keep getting asked about this, and I keep giving the same answer is I don't know what they do, because that's recruiting, and they're not going to go around and kind of show us what they're doing. That's for the recruits. Now, I'm not saying we couldn't find out. I think once this COVID thing is over, whenever that is, and we get back to normal and we're able to have normal contact with coaches, I think it'd be real easy for me to find a good time when Musselman's got a minute and ask him about it. I could ask, you know, Coach Pittman about it. But when we're only doing Zoom interviews with those guys, that's not a question I'm going to ask, because there are other things that are important. So be patient, hang in there. We're eventually going to get an answer for all you people that want to know what they're doing. But what we know now is from recruits.
Yeah.
And they haven't been very specific, but nobody's mentioned any live streaming. Nobody's mentioned any virtual reality stuff. So I don't think any of that's going on.
I have talked to a head coach of a not baseball, basketball, or football about the virtual recruiting and how it's gone, and they told me that they have different ways of doing it. There's a way that's kind of pre-recorded and shows you the facility and takes you on a trip and shows you kind of what it is, and it's already pre-recorded, or there's a version that doesn't have any voice track on it, and they're able to talk through it with the recruit if they have any questions. So that's a smaller sport. I'm sure it's a much bigger scale for football, basketball, and baseball, but it sounds like those are kind of the options
that probably be the live streaming he's talking about.
Yeah.
But again, until one of these coaches, especially Musselman and Pittman, tell me exactly how this works, I'm not going to be able to answer that question.
Yeah, we don't really know. Swine American says, in this day when facilities are being built and upgraded by just about everyone, when do you go to other SEC venues to cover games? Do you have time to explore the other programs' facilities? If you do, what stands out? We're told that Arkansas facilities are second to few, if any. Do you find this to be true?
When we go to other places, other schools, and you know this, we're not touring their facilities. We just go to the stadium.
Yeah.
And you're not going to
Or arena.
Yeah, or arena, or baseball stadium.
Yeah.
So we're not going to go, hey, can we go in your indoor workout area? Can we go to your cafeteria for your players?
Yeah.
So we don't see that. There's a much easier way to do that for fans. You just go to that school's website. Every one of them has a thing you can click on that shows their facilities. So yes, I have looked at all of those facilities fairly recently. I don't do it all every day, but I've done it over time. Here's what I would say. If you're talking football, Alabama and Tennessee are really, their football facilities are really good. And I'm not just talking about their stadium. I'm talking about, you know, their locker rooms, how they work out, how that whole thing, it's just really impressive. And Tennessee's got some fine facilities overall. There are some schools that I think are kind of lagging. Auburn, you would think Auburn, but right now they're kind of old and like, you know, you look at their baseball field's not impressive. Their basketball, I think they may be building a new football operations center or may have already built one, but the last time I was there, it was old and kind of, just looked old school. Ole Miss and Mississippi State have upgraded. I'm really impressed with what Mississippi State has done. They have this reputation of being stark no place or whatever they call it, but that campus has got some good stuff on it, and their facilities are good. LSU has some things about their overall program that I think are kind of needing an update. But what I would say about Arkansas is this: almost all of their sports have really modern, updated facilities. The two that don't, one of them is swimming, and they don't really have their own swimming facility. They rent that hyper pool. And I'm not sure, I've never asked, I'm not sure what those swimmers do for a locker room or a place to hang out. I don't know if they have any of that. And then the same thing for tennis. That indoor tennis building is old. It's adequate. It's got 4 courts in it, and it's good for when you have bad weather and you want to play indoors. But the locker rooms, from what I remember, are not really modernized. Maybe they've done it lately. And then the outdoor courts have been improved. So those two sports maybe need some upgrading, but the one sport that was big time here that needed help was outdoor track. Because if you go over to John McDonald Field, if you went on to the east side, into the east side under the stands, they had some really weird locker rooms in there, and they didn't look very impressive to me when I kind of peeked in there. Well, now they're building a whole new thing across the south end, and it is a track performance area, you know, just like football and basketball and the rest of them have. And then baseball, come on, you couldn't beat their facilities in baseball.
Can I tell you what was impressive? We did something with Shauna Taylor for a special we did a few weeks ago on Stacy.
Golf.
Holy cow. They have this players lounge, not in their little indoor putting chipping range that they have over there, but they've got a players lounge that is sweet. We did our interview with Shauna in there, and it is nice.
They may have that for tennis and swimming now. I don't know. I'm not sure about those two sports, but my point is
Arkansas's taking care of all of their sports.
Overall facilities are probably the best in the SEC. Plus, I don't know of anybody that's got a combination dining hall and study facility like Arkansas's. That's just state of the art. So it's pretty good.
Absolutely. Hog Wild says one of the complaints that Bielema's lawyers alleged is that the school, quote, Euripides? What is that
I
word?
don't know.
That's a
Maybe
legal word that I don't know.
Surreptitiously or something.
Euripidisly. I'm apologizing. I totally butchered that word. Okay, anyways. Provided false and misleading information to a sports journalist that portrayed Coach Bielema in a false light and lessened his chances of being selected to fill a head coach position in the months that followed. Do you know if the reporter was employed by local or national media? Do you know the content of this misleading information?
No, I don't have any idea who that Bielema is talking about or who his lawyer is talking about. And it sounds a little weird to me. Let's stop and think about it. If you're Arkansas and you've got this $12 million buyout you're supposed to pay to Bielema, are you going to go around bad-mouthing him to reporters so they will bad-mouth him and then other schools won't want to hire him? That would be stupid, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because then you wouldn't have to pay him anymore.
You want him to get another job,
Yeah.
so you would not do that intentionally. Now, what I think is much more likely is that any of us, including whoever this mysterious reporter is, well, anytime a coach gets fired, we do stories on what went wrong. Now, some of it's based on personal observation. I wrote stuff about Bielema, and you could see this going on, that going on. I mean, basically, his staff got really weak those last 2 years. It wasn't anything like the staff he had the first 2 years, and we've talked about this. When he lost Sam Pittman, he was done for. He may not have known it.
That was hard.
But that was a mistake. And there were just a lot of other problems, so I wrote about some of that. Some of it I got from sources. Now, I don't think I'm the guy or the reporter they're talking about, but if he was up for a job, naturally that other school that he's up for are going to do their homework, and they might read what the media is saying about it. But that's not anything that Arkansas would be responsible for. They didn't cause it to happen. They wouldn't want it to happen.
I also have a hard time believing that a Power 5 school or whatever this job may be is going to put that much stock into what the media is saying about this coach and not do their own kind of personal background checks.
This is what I continue to be told, that as a part of that buyout, he had to demonstrate at various points that he was out there trying to get a similar job. And what he did instead was he got pretty much a volunteer job with the New England Patriots. At some point, he may have started getting money, but it wasn't anything like the kind of money that most coaches would make. And that went on for a period of time, and the Razorback Foundation looked at that and went, well, wait a minute here. He's just over there. We basically are paying this guy to be an extra coach for the New England Patriots. That's not what we should have to do. And so they just stopped paying. The issue became, and they'd already paid him $450,000, or how much was it? $4.5 million. They'd already paid him $4.5 million. And they went, we're not paying him anymore. And nothing happened. He ended up with this job with the Giants, which paid more. He's an actual real coach there. And he didn't ask for this money, hey, why are you not paying me? Nothing was said. And then all of a sudden, they sent him a notice that they wanted their money back because you didn't try to get a head coaching job. You just went around and you were a volunteer. And that's when he decided to sue them, going, you're not taking my money away that I've already. And so I don't know how this is going to come out, but that part of it I don't think is going to work.
Yeah. All right. Quickly here, we got to have one more question. I got to go hang out with Coach Bucknam at 3.
Okay.
Playboard says, an easy question for you. Who are the top 8 candidates for Musselman when replacing Coach Crutchfield?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily an easy question.
I personally don't follow that kind of thing. I talked to Kevin McPherson, who gives us a lot of help with regard to basketball. He's mostly a recruiting guy, but he hears a lot of stuff about college basketball in what he does. And he said there's a guy on Musselman's staff, director of basketball operations, that might possibly be considered. There's another guy out there that was on his staff at Nevada, which might be in the mix, but he doesn't know for sure. And he basically said that Musselman's doing a pretty good job of keeping this under wraps, and you would see where he would do that. So I don't know that we're going to hear a bunch of names pop up until he hires somebody.
Yeah. Coach Z.
Yep.
We like Z on the radio, though.
Not sure that'll happen.
All right, that is it for another week of Ask Mike. Remember, if you have a question for Mikey, just head on over to hogville.net under the Ask Mike forum and ask away. We read them all here. Yeah. Nothing is off limits, we promise. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.